Hi, Bob. How you doing?
Hey, what's happening?
We're really glad that that you accepted the invitation to join us. I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself. Your colleague at Meta, creative product lead. But please introduce yourself and a little bit more about what you do at Meta with products.
Cool. Well, thanks again for having me. My name's Bob, and I've been at Meta for about 8 years now, a little over 8 years. My background's the creative agency world, where for many years I was working at creative ad agencies in Chicago and New York. Leo Burnett, some time at Chiat, agencies like that in Chicago and LA, where I met just a ton of great creative people. And I can share a little bit more about my story kind of as we go through our day to day. But I've been at Meta for several years now. I'm on a team called Creative Shop at Meta, and our mission is to explore the creative potential of our platforms. So we look at all manner of different creative expression, from stuff that happens in apps like Facebook and Instagram, but also into emerging tech like what's going on in headsets and wearables right now. So I'm super excited to join you guys here today. There's been some amazing stuff shared already. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining us. You're definitely the perfect person to have on with us today, talking about the possibilities of the web with this new medium. And I know Meta is spearheading accessibility of immersive content on the web through the headset with the Oculus browser, enabling true interoperability between hardware platforms. How does WebXR for an adaptable experience for everyone allow brands to meet the consumer where they are?
Yeah, that's what's so exciting. Almost as exciting as my lights going out in this room. They went back on. But that's like the adaptability, as you mentioned, is like one of the most exciting aspects of this space. And as creative teams are asked every day to build stuff that not only is amazing creatively and can potentially win awards and kind of capture the imagination of the culture at large, they're also asked to make sure that whatever they're building can achieve really important scale. And so when we look at something like WebXR, we're able to do both of those things. And so, the future of these spaces are not just in any one device. That's something that I love about, thinking about the creative future of the metaverse, is this idea of continuity, where experiences can travel with you wherever you go. And so I think, WebXR is just an awesome example of how that technology can meet people on the devices that are most appropriate for them, kind of where they are in their lives or in their day. And the experience can kind of be at the center and adapted in many different ways. Some of the projects that we're working on now in the WebXR space that are still being built, so I can't share too much about them. But what I love about them are that they're built to be experienced in a lot of different ways, where, for example, a headset experience can be highly immersive. We can step into the shoes of someone else, if you will, and have an experience that we wouldn't normally get to have. But then later in the day, when I'm out on my mobile or when I'm on my desktop, I can then have an experience that's optimized for that situation. And I think that's just, creatively such a great space to be in. In my background, coming from ad agencies, starting about 20 years ago now, if I'm not going to date myself, we started building banners and websites was really a lot of the work that we did. And so a struggle with building, microsites, for example, was that we had a hard time driving people to them. We didn't have quite the discovery engines that we do today with, mobile feeds and other ways to drive people to experiences, be those like very deep kind of like brand heavy experiences, or, something more commerce driven like shopping. And what is so exciting about this moment is that we have these amazing discovery engines via Facebook and Instagram and other apps, but we can start pointing people to these experiences in really powerful ways. So kind of coming back to that point about, great creativity and really important scale. We're at a moment now where we can drive that scale through our mobile apps and start to point people to really great experiences.
Yep, it's all about scale, which is why we're, talking about creating on the web, because that's eventually where a lot of things are going to lead, because that's where we can reach everyone on their current devices. Even as we scale in terms of like the evolution of the hardware platforms as well. So what kind of creative potential do immersive mediums, and particularly WebXR, unlock for brands looking to innovate the way that they engage with customers?
Yeah, so if we start with thinking about the creative potential, and then we'll kind of like talk about how that creative potential can lead to really interesting results for businesses. I think what is the thing that resonates most with me as someone who comes from the creative industry. I've been an art director and a creative director for many years. I love design. I love the experience people have of kind of going deep inside of a visual world. And so what I think is most appealing there is on the web being able to create anything you want, creating an immersive world that I can dive into with my friends in WebXR, creating some kind of musical experience, just for example, where I can grab a virtual instrument and play it, even if I really don't know how to play that instrument. Taking a virtual cooking class. I'm just making stuff up now. But that idea that on the web and through WebXR, we're able to create these highly imaginative experiences for people, I think is the most liberating, immersive experience that someone can have right now. A lot of stuff that we build at Meta or other platforms, these proprietary worlds like Horizon worlds, as great and amazing as those are, and sometimes they have a bit of some guardrails around them for very good reasons, and those are great experiences. But as a creative team, I think the freedom of something like building on the web is just really, really appealing, especially as we kind of all start to take our first steps into these immersive spaces. I mean, just the fact that I can go build something relatively quickly and inexpensively and place it on the web for other people to experience really feels like the foundation of what the internet was built on, is allowing people to express themselves and to share with other people, often in very lightweight ways, often without having to partner with a tech company or a big developer, but just people who like to build and create can then express themselves with their friends or with people they've never met before. So that's like, I think, creatively one of the most amazing aspects of it. Like I'll talk about like how that creativity moves into business as well. But before I move on, like, is there anything you wanted to add or go deeper on in that first part?
No, that was great. And I was going to move on to business in terms of like what's the potential revenue, like consumer attrition, organic community growth opportunities that are created with spatial technologies.
Yeah, so like if I put my like CMO hat or like my acquisition officer hat, I don't have one of those hats, but I've seen them. If I had one and I put it on, I would think about how powerful the use of just one URL can be in driving my business, but also in driving a better understanding of what I do and what I sell. The fact that I can go to my Instagram app and open it up and see an ad that's interesting to me and click on it and open up the browser and then explore something and maybe even buy it right then on the spot. Obviously, that's what has been a really important part of commerce for the last several years. But I think if I'm also able to take that same URL and put on my Quest 2 and open up the browser and navigate to it and have a completely immersive experience that is very closely related to that commerce experience, then I feel like we start to kind of join those two sides of the house, where we're not just talking about the web as something that can drive business, meaningful conversion results, for example, but it's also something that will allow people to gain a better understanding of what we're selling. I think we've all had that experience of seeing an ad in Facebook or Instagram, for example, maybe tapping on it and maybe opening it and kind of being like, I don't quite get what this is. I thought it looked cool, but I'm not understanding it, so I'm going to go back. My lights go off again. Just over here trying to, but to be able to help people have a better understanding of that product, or even potentially virtually pick it up, or see how it looks in my space, or hop into a virtual automobile that I certainly couldn't have anything like that kind of experience on the mobile web. That power of a centralized one URL that can drive all sorts of different experiences starts to kind of like combine the superpowers of these more brand focused creative experiences with something more shopping based. And then, to have some kind of experience later on through a messaging experience that helps me, learn more about the product after I own it. And it's all connected. There's just so much creative potential in those spaces.
Yeah. Now, a big reason for brands to get involved with XR in the first place is to get more people into the metaverse and then create opportunities to engage, transact, and ultimately provide more value to the consumer in new ways. So like how do you envision brands creating that new value for both the brand as well as consumers beyond what traditional means are able to offer currently?
Yeah, I think that's where, looking a little bit into the future too, when we start to see, stuff like more mixed reality happening, or when we start thinking about wearables in an interesting way, I think we start to then kind of blend the worlds of reality with going on around me and starting to add, virtual elements to that reality. So like I mentioned a minute ago, this could be something very product focused, like if I'm considering buying a lamp or a rug, how might that look in my space at home through something like a mixed reality experience on the web? But if I'm an advertiser who has, objectives that are a bit more brand oriented, I can also allow people to step into my, virtual showroom, or I can take people on a virtual journey in their space that combines elements from my world as an advertiser and my brand, and give people an opportunity to bring those into their homes. I mean, that's a really new space that we haven't really even started to dive into, is these mixed reality experiences that allow brands to be in someone's home. Like, what does that mean? How will a brand make that meaningful for people? One of the projects that we're working on now on my team is around brand utility, and this idea of a brand helping people accomplish something in their lives. We're working on something with a partner kind of around fire safety at home, where I might be able to prepare myself for the event of something like a house fire, which is far more prevalent than many of us would imagine. So as a brand, I might be able to take someone through a couple of very quick and easy steps on how to prepare for that, just so that in the event of something like that, I'm a little bit more prepared than I would have been before the experience. And that experience, is also a powerful driver of action. So that it's one thing to kind of tell me that I need to be prepared for something like a house fire. It's another thing for me to put on a headset and have an experience that really helps me learn that. So, these new spaces that kind of take us down the wearable path or something down the mixed reality path, they allow us to bring elements of a brand or a product or an initiative to life in people's lives in a new way.
I love the idea of brand utility, and that is something that I preach all the time in terms of mass adoption of the technology. Because unless you're an inherent gamer, or you have an affinity towards innovations, or you're in the industry, it's going to take the necessity or something to make your life easier or better in some way for you to actually want to be in a headset. And so things like, helping people be more prepared in entertaining and gamified ways is a great way to do that. That definitely takes like branded content to another level, because you're not just selling a product, you're selling the lifestyle, or, you know, everything else that comes with, you know, interacting and engaging with that product. And it's very, very interesting, and it's, you know, educational at the same time. And who knew that a fire extinguisher could be something that, you know, could have content revolving around something that both the parents and the adults, you know, have some utility out of, but something that could be a learning opportunity for their child at the same time, in a fun and engaging way. So I love that. And I do think it's going to take partnership with these big brands to drive that utility of these for the adoption of the technology. But there's still a lot of potential, but still a lot of questions that need to be answered about how to create seamless brand experience and experiences and revenue streams. So can you talk about managing clients' expectations about what is now possible that can create a lot of impact while still preparing for like the grand vision of these technologies?
Yeah, we have a lot of work to do. I think the easier part is kind of doing what we've been doing in this conversation, is talking about like the possibilities, right? Like that's super fun. And once you get going, you can kind of, we had a whiteboard in here, we could fill it up, you know, in 10 minutes because we'd have so many ideas. And I think what starts to happen then, as we, you know, sit in rooms with businesses and clients and advertising agencies, we love the ideas. I think what happens is we start to talk about, okay, now how do we make these things? How do we start building them? And very quickly, what we realize, and where I think as an industry we have a lot of work to do, is we realize that these experiences, especially headset experiences, can be quite expensive to develop for a business. You know, it sometimes feels like it's the kind of stuff that's out of reach for a lot of businesses to spend, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially on an immersive experience on the web. So I think, you know, we have a lot of work to do. One, and just as an industry, starting to build more experiences that can be achieved on reasonable budgets. Like I said, it's like the easy stuff kind of is like these big ideas that are very expensive and take a long time. It's easy to think of those. What's more challenging is to think about ideas that will not break the bank, but will still be really valuable. How do I take, you know, this big idea that has, you know, 17 things that we thought about doing and find just the one that we want to make sure people take part in? You know, that's much more difficult. I think I don't remember who said this, but somebody said at some point, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. And I think that kind of, you know, creative editorial voice, if you will start to take us to actually more interesting places. Because when we start focusing on one really important experience that people can have, it becomes more meaningful, I think, than, you know, jumping into a virtual experience that has hundreds of places I could go. What's the one that really makes an impact and sticks with people? I'm not even going to try to turn my lights on anymore at this point. I'm just going to keep going. You know, and it comes back to kind of something we were talking about a minute ago, which is like, we talk a lot of, especially in like the digital mobile business driving economy, we talk about stuff like, you know, conversion and stuff like consideration, you know, where businesses have objectives they need to meet, and they come to us to help meet those. And I think whatever we're asking people to do, whether it's to learn more about an automobile and eventually, you know, buy it or pre-order it if it's electric, or, you know, understand how a t-shirt is made before they decide that it's the t-shirt that they want. Or if it's even like we were talking about fire prevention, there isn't a moment of consideration where we're asking people to stop what they're doing, whether they were scrolling through looking for baby photos on Facebook, or whether they're, you know, having to put a headset on. We're asking them to stop in the middle of their lives and take a minute and consider something with us as businesses, to actually learn something new and to think deeply about it, and to think about whether or not it fits into their life. That is a really, really deep ask of people who are just trying to get on with their day and, you know, get their kids to soccer practice or whatever, which I have to do all the time. then there's that moment of taking someone from consideration into a conversion event if they're interested in doing that. And I think that's where we kind of talk about it right now as kind of two different experiences, where someone might spend time in a headset having this consideration moment with WebXR, but they might at another time go to that same URL and have more of a conversion experience where they're ready to take action.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would love to see us do as well is, on top of making things that are easier and more achievable on more limited budgets, is think about how we bring those two events together a bit more. And how do we build something in headset that's not just amazing and cool and it's an awesome way to spend a few minutes, but also starts to help drive action, whether that's buying something, signing up for something, taking meaningful action in your own life around health and wellness or safety or whatever it might be. I think that's where we need to start, and we'll get there. We're still kind of in cool, amazing, immersive headset experience space for a lot of good reasons. But once we start to get into like more advanced moves, it becomes about this consideration and conversion moment happening together. And I just think it's such a superpower of WebXR that we can't we can't stop at just immersion.
Yeah, and I've said this multiple times during the summits, and I've heard other people say the same thing. It's all about those small wins, being able to fail in those small efforts, right? And really learn what works and what doesn't work. You don't need a big budget, nor would I really advise you to put a huge budget forth, during your first iteration of trying to get into this space and experiment, because we are all making it up as we go and seeing what works and what doesn't. And quite frankly, consumers may or may not even be there, at the point of awareness to where they can really, engage with what you're trying to do in these grandiose visions anyways. So, to have that on your roadmap it's important to have that foresight so you can, prepare yourself for what you are investing in now and understand how that's going to grow and scale. However, that may not even be what is, what's really wanted or desired at this time. I mean, we're at the point where seeing an asset on a mobile device in augmented reality, or seeing like a filter putting on makeup, like that is good enough. And people are loving it, and it's all about personalizing that experience and helping to share that brand identity through the, through people personalizing their experiences and wanting to share it with their network. I mean, as like the low hanging fruit is really that, So how does WebXR then play an essential role in setting the stage for wearables when the presence platform and the internet will be accessed more naturally through these entirely new form factors then?
Well, I love that you mentioned Spark AR because I think it really is a great gateway into these spaces where we're starting just to get a peek of what it's like to add virtual elements to your life, whether it's something like a face filter or something where you turn the camera around and your world is transformed. I think that is a huge step, and sometimes those experiences are really great. Sometimes they're kind of like confusing or not super seamless. So I think we have a good group of examples now that we can learn from and start to take us into those wearable worlds. I also think that in order to really make this kind of augmented mixed reality kind of world, in order to grow it really well, I think we need to start thinking about how we can empower people to build their own experiences, even just everyday people. I think if we go back to the internet and we think about something like Blogger or WordPress or these technologies that gave literally anybody the potential to put an idea out on the internet, I think we need more of those so that more people become contributors to this space versus just being someone who consumes something. And I say that because once a person, whether they're a professional creative or just a person at home who maybe is in a different industry, once they start to understand and see the power of just sharing an idea, even if it's with a group of close friends, then they start to want to look for more of them. They want to find new experiences that they can have at home and elsewhere. And then maybe they'll be, more interested in wearing something like a watch or a pair of glasses. I mean, we still have a long way to go before I feel like, a pair of smart glasses are really really built in a way that can help us to contribute to society versus just kind of being a consumption devices. So I'm really excited about where we start to go and democratize creativity in these spaces in order to make these new kinds of devices like wearables, in order to make them really good. I think we need to really understand what the people value is in them, and how anyone can use them to kind of take part in experiences that others have built, but also to build their own experiences, to feel like it's a part of their lives in a way that helps them not just like absorb stuff, but connect with people and put stuff out there, and connect with people who are with them or in other spaces.
I love it. Again, being able to contribute. I mean, again, that adds to the personalization of content, and getting people involved with contributing, drives them to come back and drives their friends and families to come back and consume and contribute with them. And that's the key to creating that community around whatever it is, you want to create community around. So definitely, like the multi-user aspect or collaboration aspect is definitely important, because as siloed as one might think an XR experience might be, a lot of people go into these mediums for the socialization collaboration aspect of these things. So so it's important to keep that in mind when developing strategy also. So so what are you most excited about then coming on the horizon? And whether it's technological developments, collaborations, acquisitions, anything, brands that are coming on board now, what are you seeing and what are you excited about?
Yeah, whenever we talk about these new spaces and when we get into rooms with creative teams, I'm always amazed at how many of our creative partners, even at Meta or outside of Meta, just how many people haven't tried building something in these spaces. I think whether you have a background in kind of more traditional creative endeavors like video or print or art or drawing, like sometimes I think people kind of feel closed off and like, oh, there's all this new stuff and I really don't get it, or I don't care to get it. And I've been in similar places myself, and I'm like, oh man, I got to learn all this new stuff now. But what always happens, I think, and we try to do this in our workshops, is when folks who are inclined to create something, when they actually take part in the building of it, it really starts to open their minds to how they can use it to achieve whatever goals they have. So I would encourage anybody just to go download Spark AR or something and spend a couple hours with it, or find a way to build something in these new spaces so that you don't feel like a passive observer, but you feel like someone who's contributing to these new environments. So that's the most exciting thing for me right now, is we're so early. Let's just let people get in and start playing and having fun and expressing themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I love most about what you guys are doing with the Spark AI program right now is, creating a culture of new learners, allowing people to be new learners, and helping to onboard them through all the learning materials and courses that you guys have so diligently put together. So for anybody that's looking to get into the space and develop new skill sets, I would definitely start with the Spark AR curriculum that Meta has free on their website. So it's definitely a good way to develop your skill sets in this space. And obviously there's a platform for creation there where brands are already publishing too. So there's definitely big opportunity there to get involved. So thank you, Bob. We really appreciate you coming on with us and look forward to having you at future summits.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Bye.